We'll give 1 more minute just in case.
Good on YouTube.
Let's get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do you like?
Bow your head, everyone. Thank you, Lord, for giving us a day for change and letting us come in and meet today without any dodging of weather and crazy hydroplaning and whatnot. Glad that everybody was safe. And I also want to, send your prayers and send your love to people in Nashville for the horrible incidents that happened today. So that we can live with this as a people. The Lord, please give us every safe journey as we continue our flying and missions for CDD. Amen.
Amen. All right, Lon, would you like to give an update on 740 Charlie Papa?
Sure. I flew it home to K-Rail today. It's in the hangar. Saw you and Mike and Gary Cinnamon, the new number for the PFD, and I told Gary that I'd follow up with the Vista Aviation and get them to send us about the maintenance change that had occurred. So I've been expecting the same that's to go. I was scheduled or sent an email Monday, put maintenance in the schedule on Monday for about 8 hours. So I haven't got a response back from him yet, so I'll poke him again in a couple of days to make sure that he read our email, because it's going to go to PL. Right now it's got I think about 14 hours of time left on it before the 50-hour mark. We can go over 10 hours, so I'm not too worried about it, but we need to get it in there. The other thing through is I changed it that the FAA has extended our registrations for 7 more years, so they don't have to re-register things for 7 more years. But we don't have that new card. I checked today, and our in 2024, and so Gary had asked us to put it back to the current date in AMRAD, so I did that today. And whenever we get the new card, then I'll update that. So the planes seem to be flying beautifully.
Okay, thank you very much. And have you seen any issues with backup attitude indicator? Sometimes it's late, getting warmed up. It's bouncing all over the place every so often, or was it addressed?
The what should it standby?
The standby attitude indicator, yes.
Oh, I have not noticed that at all. I didn't, I phoned it twice now, Friday and then today. I didn't notice that at all.
I didn't notice it the whole time down.
Oh.
Hello.
We have a new member.
Yeah, I didn't notice it the whole time down in.
Okay, that's good. It happens once in a while, so it's not consistent, I guess.
Well, you guys have to do it every
We'll try it and, how expensive they are to change.
no license on it.
It's for any.
Okay, thank you, Lon. Before I hand over to Chris, I have few things to cover. First is air show. So we will be taking 743 Charlie Papa to March Air Force Base for put it on display. Myself, Terry will attend it at least first half of Saturday, and we have other pilots scheduled to attend to the aircraft for the rest of the event, second half on Saturday and Sunday. Terry is flying the aircraft to Reef Airport, and I'm flying it back to Riverside.
And on the 22nd, Friday, for stage.
Yeah, he's flying it actually on Thursday for staging, and it will be there until Sunday after the show. The departure is set around 5-6 p.m. So still there is an opportunity to sign up for volunteering. Let me know if you need that sign up link. I will pass it along. It actually may be an opportunity for us to raise some funds. I will be talking to events organizers on specifics. There was an email distributed for this subject. We'll see if it happens or not. But if it happens, we will need some members to attend specific stations in order to get participation in fundraising. We will be taking mission management kit with us to the show because the event is being run as actual incident. So we just need to make sure we don't forget that. So I have a mental note for myself, I have a written note, and I mentioned it to Terry since he's flying it from here. So we'll make sure this is happening. Any member who sign up for attending must be current on cadet protection course because there is a lot of cadets there, and at most stations cadets will be helping during the event. So make sure if you are signed up, you're current with cadet protection course. Last but not least, we all should be registered as disaster services workers. The details on how to sign up were distributed again via email. I will post it on disaster relief Teams channel. So look for that. But the email is there. The instructions are very straightforward. There is a form to complete and instructions how to submit that form. You will receive, if everything is done right, you will receive a confirmation that you are registered, and it will be displayed on your qualifications. The email on this subject was sent from Major Boyd, B-O-Y-D, so check it out. And once again, reminder, check your COP email at least once a week, because pretty much that's the only reliable communication channel for all matters related to CAT. That's all I had. So, Chris, the floor is yours.
Hey everybody. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the aerospace for educators, aerospace education for educators programs. Just bring that up real quick on the website. I posted the link also in the chat so that anybody can check it out online or later. The main thing I wanted to talk about is a, a, a program called the Aerospace Education Members. This is a program for primarily for educators. It allows school teachers and other people who are in education role to enroll with CAP as an aerospace education member. They are not a full CAP member. They are not a member of any squadron. They pay a one-time $35 membership fee, and with that, they get access to a ton of CAP resources for STEM. I actually printed out the pamphlet that they have on there. It's downloadable, but I wanted to print out so we could all take a look at it ourselves. It includes the main parts of the program and a list of the various STEM kits that are available. If any of you have access to a school, or your kids are in school, anything like that, this is something we can work with schools on. The unit does have a report at the end of the year detailing how many where we list how many CAP AEMs we sign up. The $35 fee that is charged is a one-time fee for life. It's not an annual fee. They do have to renew it every year. Now, that's just the overview of it. What this will mean is those aerospace education members, again, we're mostly talking about teachers here, but who else can benefit from this? The definitions are actually what it says is a professional educator or anyone who is a reputable adult with responsibilities of raising children or educating children. That means if you are a homeschooler, if you are a member of a church and you're working with the children's ministry there, you can do things like that. If you are a part of a scouting organization, you can work with them and get those leaders enrolled in this program. Basically, almost anybody that is in the position where they actually educate students in some way, educate children, can get this program. This is for K through 12, so unlike our normal cadet program, right, which is 12 years old and up, this program starts all of the grade school ages. The benefits to them is it gives them a curriculum of approved educational books that they can request from CAP free of charge. It gives them access to a myriad of STEM kits. Again, on the back of the sheet is a large list of them. I don't believe this is all of them, but just going over some of them, you have some coding tools for starting at ages 4, astronomy tools, geometry tools, a weather station, shapes and angles, mechanic tools, bridge building, some robotics stuff, rocketry, hydraulic engineering. There's an indoor quadcopter, so you can get that real early drone usage. Again, more robotics. There's even the Raspberry Pi access, like I talked about a couple months ago with the Raspberry Pi I brought in here. General aviation navigation stuff. There's even flight simulators and larger drones, outdoor and quadcopters, and remote-controlled aircraft available. This is, again, it's a really great way to both bring up, to help instill STEM education in the youth. If you're not sure what STEM is, that's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's also a really good recruiting tool, both to get some potential cadets into the pipeline, because this is not a program for cadets. This is a program for, again, for teachers and people, again, responsible for teaching children. So a lot of these kids, like these teachers start becoming an AEM, and then they start talking to these kids about this program at a young age. They might grow up and they say, they want to join CAP as a cadet. Maybe they go through that whole program and it leads them towards an aviation career or Air Force or anything along those lines, simply because they started off getting this neat STEM kit in their classroom from the Civil Air Patrol. Like I said, there's really not a negative that I can see to it. It's just, there's just so much nice, great stuff that you can do. Another thing that can benefit us, I know we have a lot of we're always talking about the orientation flights, the overrides for the cadets. Well, there's a similar program for the aerospace education members. It's called a Top Flight, Teacher Orientation Program. And when we sign up an AEM, they can be enrolled, or they can actually sign up if they wish to and get a top flight. That's actually what that picture that just scrolled by was. A top flight is when basically you take one of these teachers up in the plane and show them what aviation's like. One of the examples that they gave in one of the videos that I was watching on this was they would take a teacher up in the plane and tell all the students for that teacher. They would, go in the middle of the school day, and the students would then track the teacher on FlightAware or something along those lines, and just watch the flight. And then if it's allowable, based on the airspace, of course, you would fly over the school and maybe do a few circles over the school, and the kids would, look up, and of course you have to stay at a safe altitude, so you can't see it too closely. But it's just a nice thing. The kids are sitting there on the ground looking up and saying, "There's my teacher up there," and the teacher's looking down and hopefully holding their lunch down. But again, it's another opportunity to get some flight hours here as well, because on those top flights, those are missions. I believe they'll be ranked in the same category as an orientation ride. Couldn't find that for sure. But that's some of this information. The curriculum materials that the teachers can get. Let me click on that so I can bring another page. If you go into, again, this website is just by the way, this is the public-facing website, so you can actually send this if you have anybody that you're thinking of or wants more information. You don't need to log in or anything to get to the site. This is just gocivilairpatrol.com, and then you navigate to the aerospace education programs, and then under curriculum, there is this PDF here, which lists a bunch of books and such that they can get. Aerospace: The Journey of Flight, which of course is the one we're studying for the. This is the not quite the edition that we're using for the Jaeger Award, but it's very similar. There's Aerospace Dimensions, which is a 7-module teacher guide. Aerospace for the Very Young, which is for grades K through 3. Advanced Aerospace Math for 10 up to college. Some books about the Wright brothers from K through 3 and also 4 to 9. Robotics. Some books on Amelia Earhart. Some rocketry. Couple rocketry books. And again,
more books we have. We even have some CDs on remote sensing. Books on just airmen, astronomy, and it covers all the different aspects of aerospace education. This is in addition to the STEM kits, which is just a ton of resources that we can use to reach out to, again, those people who in our lives who may be in some way interfacing with children in an educational role. Do you have any questions on any of this stuff?
So all teachers qualified for enrollment as educator members or subject teachers?
it didn't. I didn't see anything listing any subjects. It just said basically any teacher. Now, of course, with the American system, right, anybody under about 6th grade or less is going to be a general purpose teacher anyways for all subjects. It of course will be of most interest to science, to STEM teachers already, but there's actually, from what I can see, no requirement unless you're aware of one. Mainly because a lot of these programs cross multiple what's the right word? Multiple subjects, disciplines, sort of. You can work a way of English, for example, but write up a story about how how aviation affected your life type of thing, or how aerospace education affected your life. So there's all kinds of things you could do along those lines. And the biggest revelation to me when I was watching the video was that it wasn't just for teachers. Because I initially saw this and I thought this is just for school teachers. And they specifically, like, they called out homeschool teachers, which basically, right, that's usually parents. Called out, like the church groups and church leadership groups. They called out scouting units such as the Boy Scouts or Trail Life or Girl Scouts or American Heritage Girls and those organizations that, again, interface. And I believe the Boy Scouts have a badge for this, and I think so do the other organizations as well. So that's something else too that they can work with. But yeah, and there's because it literally said formal and informal in the meeting. So. You good? Okay. Yeah. So you have all kinds of options for who to talk to on this. Anything else? Not a big deep subject here, so I've got plenty of time for questions and discussion.
Any other questions? I think colleges also feed into the schools.
A couple of the books did say college education, but I believe the focus is K through 12 on this, from what I can see. I believe the college level books are probably the advanced placement type of students. So the lifetime fee is $35, and that one-time lifetime fee. They do not have to pay that next year. They do have to manually renew their membership. So it's not an automatic renewal, but there's no charge for that renewal. Basically, you just send an email into the renewal. When the do you want to renew email comes out, you reply and say, yes, you want to renew. And that's most likely just to keep the roles clean, and you know, if somebody steps out and doesn't want to continue, or if somebody passes away, it's a lot of people, so you don't have to manually interface with all those roles. And they were also saying that a lot of times, especially for larger school districts, they will cover that. Sorry, I'm getting that echo back there still. It's just throwing me off.
Yeah, I'm constantly echo.
But they said a lot of the larger school districts will cover that $35 in some cases. Maybe not the whole school enrolls, but if they just want to, they'd say the science, the fifth grade science teacher and the sixth grade teacher, and one teacher in each grade or something along those lines to be this person. A lot of times the schools themselves will cover that $35.
What is the best approach to introduce the program to schools?
That is a great question. I'm still trying to work that out myself. I'd say that the best first start is to work with people you know. If you have kids in a school, in school, you probably at least know some of their teachers. If you have teachers that are friends, talk to them. If you work at a school, you know, you can maybe get some, get some inroads there as well. And you know, this essentially just have to do something to open that line of communication. I want to find out for sure more on how to just, I guess the best word would be a cold call. This type approach of, for example, I have a friend who is a teacher. I've already started conversations with her about it. So that's great. That's cool. But I don't know anybody, for example, at the Redlands School District. So I would need to kind of figure out, okay, who can I talk to at the Redlands School District to get a ball rolling there, or the Moreno Valley Unified School District, or even here in Riverside. Again, I have started the ball rolling with again, one teacher that I do know at Rialto, and one and at the church I go to, where I talk to them as well, see what we want to do. It so it's in process. Just need to figure out what everybody wants to do and show them. And basically, the main thing is being able to have the pamphlet. So of course you don't have the paper version of it, but it's online, and you can show them that, or you can direct them to the website. There is a QR code right on the pamphlet as well, so that you can have them just scan that with their phone. If you only have one copy of the pamphlet left, for example, you can say, here, do a quick scan on this, it'll take them right to the website. So that's another way to get that conversation started.
I think it's a great program, and I believe every member of Squadron should give it a try. Reach out to local community school of your choice, see what kind of things generate, and you are welcome to engage myself, increase, help you with communications, preparing for the meeting, things like that. I have engaged with the local homeschool community organization. I will be presenting to them this program sometime in the next weeks. I have also been trying to engage the China school district where I live. Children go to China High. So I'll see what I can do there. But I think it's one way to engage the community and raise awareness of civil colonization, airspace overall. These kids are pretty cool. Some of them worthwhile exploring a variety of ages.
And also on STEM kits too, that is something that as a unit we can actually
request them here as well. No, we just need to have a.
We have a few.
Okay.
Okay.
So I didn't know that we had them. So yeah, but if we don't have, we can request those. The other thing too, I just wanted to address on this is if one of the objections you may hear somebody saying, "Oh, do I need to go to meetings? Do I need to wear a uniform?" No, they're not members of the squadron. They do not have to get a uniform, wear a uniform. In fact, they're not, since they're not members, they're not full members. They don't have a uniform ability. You know, they wouldn't be able to wear the uniform if they even got one. And they don't have to be local either. So if you happen to, for example, they have an old college friend or an old high school friend that went on to become a school teacher, but they're living in New York now. Talk to them. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. Since they don't go to any meetings here with this unit, it's just a matter of getting them on the national. They're associated with CAP National, not with this squadron.
I'll make a post on Facebook about it.
And I would like to actually keep maybe one of these pinned up on the board so we have the. Let's see if I had anything else in my notes. Because again, it wasn't a whole lot of material, so I wanted to kind of focus on just this one aspect of it. But I mean, you know, just on a personal note, like some of this stuff, right? I was a really nerdy kid, and so some of this stuff, I would have been all over it. You know, the rocketry. I mean, I the kid, I had those little plastic things where you pumped them with, filled them with water and pumped them with air and shot them up in the sky. Never was allowed to play with the ones that actually have fire for some reason. And the bridge building also looks, that just kind of looks cool. Yeah. And again, there's the flight simulator too. That's a it's a yoke and rudder, and that's that's one of the first things people do when they want to get into aviation. Check out that flight simulator. Anything else?
Any other questions? Good information. And there is a lot of resources on the subject.
Yes. And that's the thing. A lot of this is, and it's not behind sign in the login wall. The one thing though they will get, now that I mentioned that, is with being an aerospace education member, they will get access to the services. So while they don't have to do anything else, they do get the access to the CAP members only side of the website as well. So that's another bonus. Unfortunately, it also means they have to learn how to use these services.
Did they roll this the cybersecurity stuff into AE?
Yes.
Yes. I don't see it on this list, and I know that there's a big cadet cybersecurity contest.
Yeah, cadet cybersecurity is part of AE, but since this is focused on non-cadets, this program is not about the cadet program. It's not really mentioned under this particular program. So again, you just let's do this. Once you go to AE programs, you have a full list of all kinds of stuff here. The educators page is where I got, I believe this is where I got the printout. They can join, there's a link here to join directly online, and there's the AEM info flyer, which is, that's what I printed out. And there's a link under the educators page for the K through 12 books, K through 12 STEM kits, tests associated to the learning materials, Aerospace Education Excellence Award Program, and then again more, just a whole plethora of And this is the part where it talks about teacher orientation flights. Find out how STEM is associated with the top flight. Pilots will fly as teachers at their closest airport for a great flying experience to share with students. Email ae@capsnhq.gov to request a flight. Again, this is an outward-facing site, so that's what they would do if they wanted to just go up and basically.
You have to be flight qualified for adult flight? That's a very good question.
Couldn't find that information. I'm presuming it would be yes. It's probably the same qualifications as an O-flight. But yeah, I was looking, I was digging. That was the one thing I was really digging to try to find and couldn't turn it up. And either it's something so obvious that I couldn't, it was right in front of me, I missed it, or I probably have to contact somebody and find out.
You can reach out to Jim Hatoy at the group level, or you can reach out to group level aerospace education officer, or if no response is received, to the wing level. And all the contacts are in the CRMA.
Anything else?
Oh, that's good. That's good. I actually really push this initiative and keep bugging members to get
Like,
at least engage with at least one school.
Yeah, and like I said, it's one of those things where I think this is something that a lot of, if we cast a broad enough net, I think we can at least catch a few fish.
And it helps the group with that program awareness, because you may get an opportunity to present this to students at school, 12 and up. That's a great way to really get their hands dirty in this space.
Yeah, and like I said, you can work on getting cadets in there, which obviously won't be this squadron, but it'll give us the opportunity with those O-rides, for anybody's O-ride qualified. It will, but there's also the opportunities to just, for people to maybe get their feet wet, right? You may see an educator who, initially all they want to do is get these STEM kits and get the free resources, and then they decide they want to do the top flight, and then maybe they decide they want to join up themselves as an actual full, squadron member, separate from the AEM. So there's all kinds of ways that this could work to both increase squadron membership and cap visibility. But again, the main thing is it's just a great thing that I think can really help get kids involved in aviation. That's really the big push.
Any other suggestion what we can talk about it? I'll figure something out.
Went a little faster than I anticipated, but
Oh, it's a great topic. I looked at it myself, and I think it could be very rewarding. And schools are very interested, should be very interested in expanding their activities. Some things you can do with schools also offer field trips to Riverside Airport or to your local airport in the area. I have done it for one school. Kids loved it. We spent about 2 hours on Riverside Airport premises. The deputy airport manager showed the kids around. They showed them the emergency response pistol. They explained why airport is laid out the way it is, and it's eye-opening for these kids. They had no clue. So I'm not sure if it resulted in any cadets joining some of cadet squadrons. I checked actually, but the feedback was pretty good, and it breaks the ground. You can really use it as a entry into the school community and do something for the kids and for your community. That's a good thing. I forgot to call them again. They were closed up until mid-January, so I was supposed to follow up with them. Good point. I will, because that makes it a lot more interesting. If you take some children to the tower, I would love to see it myself too. Yeah, speaking of which, that's actually an amazing career option. FAA has some fantastic incentives these days. So I actually, maybe I'll find it. I think cutoff is something like 30 or 27, something like that. Yeah, I'll find it. There was a post distributed on Facebook by FAA, and that's something you can also share when you talk to the schools as career option.
I think one of the biggest things that can happen with this program is also, like I was saying before, the big question that a lot of people have is, how do I even get started in an aviation career, or even started in aviation hobbies for that matter? And that can really help just create the next generation of pilots, and just by throwing more information out there. I mean, we have some really big schools around here. There's got to be some kids that want to fly.
Oh, there you go. The link is very simple, fa.gov/b-atc. And they will have, they open it up once a year. So 2022 window is closed. And the next window, I believe, opens end of May. So they talk about the career, compensation levels, etc. So this, after the academy training, the initial salary is 41,000. Not fantastic, but it's rapidly increasing from what I understand. So, well, Alaska is not that bad.
You go where the needs are, from what I understand.
You get a lot of wildlife, and fishing is fantastic, and some interesting flying too. All right, so let's see what we can talk about from airspace education point of view. Maybe I can.
Who's doing the Jaeger?
Yeah, by the way, yes, so Chris, please keep reminding members to work on the Yager Award, and actually you can simply allocate one session to go over that material, and maybe it will make it easier for new members to get it accomplished. It's not that hard, it's open book test, but some interesting facts in the study materials, which I had no idea about.
Education area, like what would we like to cover? Anything in particular?
Well, you can circle around every week, send a inquiry to the whole squadron using distribution list, and ask what are the topics you may be interested. You may offer few options and let our members vote whether they like it or not. If no topic selected, we can pick some interesting educational videos related to airspace. I listen to weekly podcasts on AOPA, basically 5 top things happening in aviation, in general aviation, in our community, and you can use that as an idea generator. Sometimes they touch on interesting matters. If no other ideas to talk about, I would offer to watch a new case study. No, that's not it. It wasn't this one. This is actually a great channel, Mentor Pilot. He's a professional pilot, and he probably makes more money from YouTube now than from flying. He has like over almost 1.5 million subscribers, and he's probably monetizing real good. But his content is pretty good quality. I watch a lot of his stuff. There you go. Air Safety. Highly recommend this channel, Air Safety Institute. I watched all of their case studies, even though some of them are not complete here. I watched them on APA website, so it doesn't reflect here. So this one is brand new, and it's very relevant for our weather, especially if you are an IFR pilot. Huh? Yeah. So it's relatively short, about exactly 15 minutes, but I think it's worthwhile seeing. Hold on a second. Yes. Probably makes it more convenient. I need to find this. Oh my. No, not this one. I have a lot. Window. There you go. So, Lon, I'll share it on chat. You're welcome to watch.
Okay.
Oh, you can actually add YouTube to Teams. I learned something new. So we can actually watch it this way. Unless it's too slow.
April 13th, 2022. It's a cold spring morning at Salt Lake City International Airport in Utah. Our pilot is departing runway 16 left in a Cessna 208 Caravan, November 928 Juliet Papa. Destination is Berlin, 133 northwest. The forecast for Berkeley calls for VFR conditions, with regular and unpredictable. Seems volatile. Too much forecast conditions. The day before, she attempted the same run and was forced to divert. Earlier this morning, she received a full weather briefing and consulted consulted with other staff pilots to help inform her launch decision. Deeming the conditions suitable, the pilot decided to proceed. Her IFR flight plan will take her from Salt Lake City to Burley Municipal Airport, using the GPS approach to runway 20 at Burley. The majority of the flight passes uneventfully. At 7:53 a.m., about 22 nautical miles from Burley, 928 Juliet Papa contacts Twin Falls approach.
Falls approach, Squadron 920 Papa 12000.
Number 928 Juliet Papa Twin Falls approach, altimeter 2997. Verify you have Burley weather and note.
997, we have the weather and note, Squadron 920 Papa.
November 8 Juliet Papa, expect RNAV runway 20 to Burley. And report 10 miles from Malt.
Expect RNAV 20 and we'll report 10 miles from Malt, Papa.
2 minutes later, the pilot reports that she is 10 miles from the waypoint Malt, and Twin Falls approach clears her for the RNAV runway 20 approach via the Malt transition at Burley Municipal Airport. Upon reaching the waypoint, the pilot checks in.
Falls approach, Squadron 920 Papa, Malt.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, roger. Report Mucho, say altitude lead.
Report Me2, 10,880 Papa.
The pilot reports her arrival at the waypoint Muto, and a short time later, at 8:07 a.m., reports passing the waypoint Irene, the initial approach fix.
Falls approach, Squadron 922 Papa is now Irene.
Number 928 Juliet Papa, report IFR cancellation in the air on this frequency or on the ground with flight services or with Twin Falls Tower. 8 Juliet Papa, change to advisory frequency approved.
Frequency approved, 8 Juliet Papa.
The pilot begins the approach to runway 20, with precise course tracking, adherence to step-down altitudes, and a steady, though slightly steep descent. From the final approach fix to the minimum descent altitude, she descends about 1,000 feet per minute. The pilot is fast in the approach, but close to her operations procedures, which call for 120 knots on approach in icing conditions until visual contact with the runway is established. With 1 mile visibility in mist and light snow, the VFR conditions forecast earlier now seem a mirage. At the minimum descent altitude, which is 4,560 feet MSL, or about 400 feet AGL, the pilot executes the missed approach procedure, continuing directly over the runway before making a climbing left turn.
Falls approach, Squadron 922 Papa, next.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, say altitude.
5,000 feet, 8 Juliet Papa.
8 Juliet Papa, execute published missed approach.
You published missed approach, 8 Juliet Papa.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, report established at Irene.
Report established at Irene, 8 Juliet Papa.
November 8 Juliet Papa, state intentions after the miss.
I would like to just shoot that same approach again, 8 Juliet Papa.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, roger. Report established in the hold at Irene. You can expect the RNAV runway 20.
Okay, we'll expect 20 and we'll let you know when we're in the hold, 8 Juliet Papa.
The Caravan climbs to 7,000 feet, heading back to the initial approach fix for another attempt.
What's approach, Squadron 8 Juliet Papa, steps hold at Irene.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, cross Irene at 7,000, cleared straight in, RNAV runway 20 approach. Report Irene.
Table cross Irene 7,000, clear C, ILS 20, I'm sorry, not that, it was RNAV is 20 into Burley.
The pilot flies outbound from the initial approach fix on the procedure turn, then turns inbound to intercept the final approach course.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, report IFR cancellation in the air or on the ground. Correction, in the air on this frequency or on the ground with Twin Falls Tower.
It will report either with you or with Twin Falls Tower on the ground, 8 Juliet Papa.
Number 8 Juliet Papa, did you cross Irene?
Negative, not yet, 8 Juliet Papa.
After crossing Irene, the pilot checks in. It's now 8:26 a.m.
Falls approach, Squadron 8 Juliet Papa, Irene.
November 8 Juliet Papa, say altitude.
2,000, 8 Juliet Papa.
8 Juliet Papa, roger. Change to advisory frequency approved.
pilot begins a controlled descent, not quite as aggressive as her first approach. She is slower this time by roughly 20 knots. Half a mile from runway 20, the Caravan emerges below the clouds in a wings-level, nose-high descent. Directly below and ahead of the airplane is a large potato processing plant, with a series of stacks, producing a large plume of steam directly on final approach to the runway. According to an eyewitness, almost immediately after emerging below the clouds, the Caravan flies into the plume of steam. The pilot powers up, lifts the nose, strikes a stack, and crashes onto the roof of the plant. Sadly, she does not survive the impact. We know what happened. The pilot was too low, too early, and hit the steam stacks. The troubling question is, why? How did she go quickly from an approach that looked under control to disaster in a half-mile span? The NTSB, now in the midst of its investigation, may not be able to fully determine why the flight unraveled. Small clues may offer insight. We may learn that several small items not by themselves hazardous collectively proved fatal. Perhaps culture played a role. The day prior to the accident, scheduled on the same route, the pilot diverted. Did that indicate she was impervious to mission pressure? Or did the notion of missing a destination 2 days in a row put added pressure on her to make it in? Delivering freight on time under tough conditions has long been a proud heritage for freight pilots. Visibility certainly played a role. The pilot may not have recognized just how low the visibility dropped at Burley before she started the first approach. As she cruised en route, the METAR reported 6 statute miles in light snow and a broken ceiling at 2,600 feet, technically VFR. By the time she reached the initial approach fix and began her approach, visibility had dropped to a mile and ceiling to 2,100 feet. A 2,100-foot ceiling is no help when visibility is only a mile. She handled it fine on the first approach, but curiously, not the second. ADS-B speeds are difficult to interpret and can be imprecise, but they are a potential clue. Did the speed variances between the two approaches indicate a pilot struggling for precision in demanding conditions? On her last approach, from near the waypoint Jammed, her speed dropped rapidly by 25 knots. If accurate, perhaps the slowing speed indicates she thought she spotted the runway and began slowing to landing speed. Perhaps the slower speeds throughout the second approach set her up for trouble in icing conditions. In a Caravan, the tail will ice first, a treacherous, insidious condition that can cause loss of control. The steam stacks at Burley at a half-mile final were at least a distraction and at worst causal. They wouldn't normally be a factor. A nuisance, yes, but not treacherous. Dozens of pilots had flown hundreds of approaches over those stacks and in poor weather. On this day, however, conditions were perfect for ruinous impact. She approached them almost directly downwind from the plumes, which would have been substantial on such a cold day. The FAA's guidance in the Aeronautical Information Manual warns against flying through exhaust plumes. The FAA specifically uses the term smokestack here, but that term can be potentially misleading. In the case of Burley, it was the emission of heated steam rather than smoke. When flying through exhaust plumes of any kind, the AIM warns of turbulence, reduced visibility, engine problems, icing, and flight control deficiency. Any of these ill effects could have occurred at Burley and would have been potentially serious in ugly weather so close to the ground. Furthermore, the effect of flying through a plume of heated air in a surrounding cold environment could have mimicked the effects of high-density altitude. A perilous loss of lift could have occurred when entering the less dense air within the plume, which may explain why the Caravan needed to power up. The RNAV 20 approach into Burley has a high minimum descent altitude and a steep 3.75 degree vertical descent angle because of the steam stack so close to the runway threshold, directly on the runway center line. The steep vertical descent angle requires an aggressive descent from the minimum descent altitude at the missed approach point to the runway. Did the first missed approach and steep descent angle nudge the pilot to get low early on the second approach? If so, had she factored in the close proximity to the steam stacks? The stacks aren't specifically mentioned on the approach chart, but obstructions are shown at 4,179 and 4,304 feet MSL. There's also a reference in the chart supplement, but it offers little detail. Another subtle clue can be found in the approach chart. On RNAV approaches, a light gray line, called a stipple, can be seen in cases where there is a clear, unobstructed path from the minimum descent altitude to the runway. In cases where an obstacle is present, and thus does not allow for a continual descent on a single glide path down to the runway surface, the gray stipple is removed from the approach chart. For runway 20 at Burley, the glide slope does not show the gray stipple. It's a hint that obstacles are close and pilots need to see and avoid objects between the approach minimums and the runway. The issue of the steam stacks at Burley has been a topic of discussion for several years. In 2017, the FAA performed an aeronautical study on the steam stacks at the potato processing plant. Despite finding that some stacks penetrated the runway 20 approach surface area by up to 61 feet, the FAA reported an overall determination that there was no hazard to air navigation. However, due to numerous other deficiencies in airport design standards at Burley, the FAA pulled federal funding from the airport in 2018. Due to safety concerns associated with these issues, there are talks of relocating the airport in order to obtain more room for expansion and needed improvements, and ultimately to meet FAA standards. A new NOTAM has been issued for Burley since the accident occurred, alerting pilots to the stacks in the vicinity of the airport, as well as the potentially dangerous steam plumes they can emit. Our lesson learned from this tragic event may be the perils of risk stacking. Single pilot, in winter conditions, on a demanding approach, with non-standard obstacle clearance, non-standard vertical descent angle, directly over stacks emitting high-temperature steam, and downwind of a debilitating plume. Clearly, all the factors prove too much. One risk element by itself may not be dangerous, but when we stack several of them together, the synergy is a negative accumulation that even the most talented and motivated pilots cannot overcome. It's easy for us to identify the risks and stack them in hindsight. One takeaway from this tragedy must be that we learn strategies to identify our accumulating risks in the moment and develop methods to recognize when the stack gets too precarious and it's time to exit.
So, stay vigilant.
There's two things. High humidity provides slower lift, reduces the lift. So we have snow, we have cold air, and steam, and that with the speed that she has, being in that plume provides icing, doesn't it? And where does it accumulate on the fuselage and the tail surfaces? So you should have looked at sink rate, and they didn't mention sink rate. Because the standard sink rate for an ILS is roughly about 500 feet per minute, 580 probably, somewhere in there. She had to do more than that. And then she went below her minimums. That was the other thing that was interesting.
Yeah, it looks like she definitely lost.
Lift in a plume and rapidly descended and tried to recover by giving all the power, but it was too late.
She probably saw the stacks. And that's made her go, they do the go around, but the closure rate was such that she couldn't climb above it. Yeah. I'm just, it's kind of interesting. Because I've been involved with this San Bernardino GPS that United Parcel has been working on, trying to get in from landing from the east when there's heavy winds. And there's so many regulations and people who are in charge of those things. You kind of wonder why they made the ILS or that LPS approach, whatever it was, go right across the stacks. Why did they approve that? I mean, they could have done a diagonal, or they could have made a circling approach on there. But I believe the FAA is just to blame than anything else.
Yeah, and after the accident, they didn't.
Remove that approach. Still keep
They
it.
put a warning in it, see. Yeah. Anyway, that's a shame.
Yeah, what was interesting for me in this accident is exactly the stack of events.
If she decided to divert after first missed approach, clearly the conditions were pretty challenging, and in her voice you can hear she's been stressed after going missed for the first time.
The other thing is, it's nocturnal, so how much sleep did she have prior to that flight? Since we're talking 6 in the morning, she may have gotten up at 3:30 at the airport, or whatever it was, 2:30, 3:30 at the airport. Brief flight plan, got airborne, because it was just an hour's flight, I think, an hour 20. And it was six there, and then plus the waste of time, so depends on when she went to sleep.
Still under investigation. It hasn't been closed yet, so we'll see
The
what
other
FAA
thing-
comes up
The
with.
other thing too that's of interest is that since we've gone to electronic instruments, the NTSB cannot take and really see what was taking place with the aircraft, because in a normal instrument, the needles freeze upon impact. And when the needles freeze, they can tell what the airplane was doing. Where in electronic, everything goes blank. There's no history of it. There's nothing they can see or review.
No, unless they have some kind
Flight recorder,
Not all airplanes have flight recorders.
even on.
commercial transport
What
airplane.
happened there, I doubt very much. It's just you're gonna find, it's 135 and 141, freighters and commercial are required. This was a non-skid aircraft, small. I don't know how you can put a recorder on that thing, but it's not operated on Part 135.
On G1000, we have
Data logger, is it like basic flight recorder, or what does it do? Yeah, I mean, that doesn't look, that aircraft looks like maybe some stuff was salvageable.
Probably. It goes to Chevron 208. But, I mean, there are third-party flight recorders, and there's a big discussion about requiring, professional operations of all types to have some sort of flight recording. So just like the Pilatus that crashed, the medevac, or the medical flight, same thing. There's no requirement to have flight recording on that aircraft. So, why did he graveyard spiral? We may never know.
Those stacks were only less than a half mile from the threshold. And it's a short,
It reminds me of those trees at Van Nuys.
and the runway itself is only.
big white one.
There are stacks right on approach
Well,
at White.
the 4 stacks, and you got the mountains right next to it, so
Yeah,
pick your poison.
killed a CAP pilot, what, 2 years ago?
2 years.
Like,
And the runway's only 0.6 of a mile long, so there's,
yeah, that's
you gotta
the
hit that threshold.
City of Los Angeles, wonderful planning department. Now there's rules that are, actually, they're not rules, but under the California Airport Land Use Plan, certain things can be built, but it's not mandatory. It's only recommended. And they tried to make them mandatory, and the legislature's voted them down consistently. Why?
They want to repurpose airports.
Someone's got their finger in the till to sell the land and buy it.
Exactly. All right.
Well, thank you everybody. Thank you, Lon. Have a good night.